Appreciate you coming today. We've, as a collection of state legislators, have some concerns about, as always, in our difficult economic times, about the stewardship of our state, where state dollars are being spent, and how we, again, in times where even priority programs in our state are being not getting the funding we know they deserve, making sure that our state dollars are well spent and we're stewarding the citizens' tax dollar both at the state level and within our local governments and authorities. Today, specifically, we came to talk about the issue of the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, known as ACORN. ACORN, as you may know, is an organization started in 1970. It's incorporated in New Orleans, Louisiana. It has nonprofit and for-profit entities within a large network that operates nationwide, and community-based organizations that do everything ostensibly from voter registration to the delivery of services and a number of stated goals that's available on ACORN's website. As many of you know, ACORN has been very active in previous years with federal contracts. In the last 2 years alone, ACORN has been the recipient at the federal level of $29 million of federal contracts in 2008 and 2009. Prior to that, they've, again, going back more than a decade, have been heavily involved in directly awarded federal contracts. Currently, they're pending $6 million in grants through the Department of Commerce that have been applied for in recent years, literally within 2009. And as many of us know, through the existing Federal Stimulus Act, because of the more than $2 billion of funding being made available for community development block grant programs, community stabilization programs, and foreclosure assistance, there's the potential for ACORN and other organizations that do ostensibly what they do to get access to millions of federal dollars as well. The concern as state legislators is that this is not purely a federal issue, although many of us have been watching over the previous months of folks raise concerns about the ACORN organization, whether it's their involvement with the Census Bureau or their involvement in federal contracts. We as state legislators have become increasingly aware of the possibility of state contracts and local contracts being awarded to organizations like ACORN with the services they provide, and again, recognizing it's not purely a Washington issue, but increasingly an issue for us to address here in the state legislature and for us to address in our 159 counties and numerous cities and authorities statewide. Recognizing that, I think it's important to know that ACORN is an organization, and as a family of organizations, is currently under indictment in a number of states. I have for you today, and we'll provide for you after this press conference, information of ongoing investigations. Again, I've got information for you today. Within the past 3 years, there are 14 criminal investigations in just 7 states. There have been 70 convictions within the last 4 years of ACORN employees. And as many of you probably know, in Florida, as recently as the 9th of this month, the Dade County District Attorney has filed criminal warrants for 11 people involved in voter fraud. So it's again, an issue that goes back a number of years, but is become, it's certainly not out of the public spotlight. And more importantly, it's not out of the range of concern of state legislators that are on their game, that are paying attention and being stewards of the citizens' resources. I'll also provide for you today a list of federal contracts I have for you here, $53 million of contracts that ACORN has participated in more than a decade. I think most importantly to know, though, is in just the last 2 years, more than half of that, $29 million, have been contracted directly from state agencies in a way that we can really put our finger on and catalog. The question today, and the question that really has raised its head for us in the last couple weeks here as state legislators has been, are there state dollars flowing to ACORN and their affiliates, and are there local dollars in our authorities and local governments in Georgia that are flowing to ACORN and its affiliates? Might also note the United States Census Bureau within the past year had initially announced a nationwide partnership with ACORN to help execute the process of the 2010 census. It's important to note, I think, that last Friday, the 11th of September, the director of the Census Bureau put out a formal letter formally severing ties from the United States Census Bureau with the ACORN organization for purposes of the census. Again, that was based on a growing concern within the organization of the ACORN organization being inconsistent with the ideals and the goals of the Census Bureau, and that culminated last week with the director's letter. As recent revelations of ACORN's involvement and conspiracy to commit crimes have come to light, I think there's been a number of very active players in the mass media nationally that have really been able to focus light on what we believe to be a culture of corruption within the ACORN family of organizations, with potential charges to include conspiracy to commit tax fraud, prostitution, other issues that have, again, been made aware to the public and been made aware to us as legislators. It was our belief that as being stewards of the citizens' tax dollar, we needed to make sure that the state of Georgia was stewarding its resources well, and it had not given contracts to ACORN that were being executed in inappropriate ways. Consistent with this, again, the group of legislators you see gathered here have gotten together within the past week and have begun a preliminary investigation through our Senate and House budget offices to see if there are existing state contracts that are funding ACORN and their affiliate organizations. Again, in these tight economic times where we have 10.2% unemployment still here in Georgia, and we're making cuts to our priority programs like education, we want to make sure that our citizens' tax dollars are being spent well. Again, we're being sensitive to citizen concerns. There's not been a hysteria here in Georgia, nor perhaps should there have been. But in conversations I've had as recently this week with a gentleman in my district who's a retired public school teacher, who's married to a public school teacher, called me and said, "Ed, how confident are we that ACORN's not operating in Georgia in a way that's benefiting from the public tax dollar? I mean, we're cutting back on teacher pay. We're furloughing teachers in some cases in most counties in Georgia. How confident are we that we're not spending other state tax dollars on organizations that are involved in, again, 14 criminal investigations nationwide?" By engaging our House and Senate budget offices, again, with support of the legislators gathered here today, as well as House leadership, we've begun a preliminary investigation into potential contracts with ACORN here in Georgia. Our preliminary look into this has identified at least one contract here in Georgia. We've identified a $104,000 contract that's been let through the Department of Human Resources to the ACORN Institute. Again, as you look at the list of contracting entities within the ACORN family that's involved federally, the ACORN Institute's been one of the more frequent recipients of federal dollars. And we have found that the ACORN Institute, again, has been the recipient of a $104,000 contract using federal dollars, a combination of federal food stamp funds, and private foundation dollars. Again, a contract that doesn't use specifically state of Georgia tax dollars, but is still a flow-through of federal money that's appropriated and managed with respect to oversight by the Department of Human Resources. Again, we've been working closely with the governor's office on this. The governor's office has been very receptive to this, as have the department heads we've spoken to. And it's our intent to, again, make sure that we can shine the light on the issue of organizations as questionable as ACORN to make sure that our state dollars are being spent well.